Right. What up, everybody? How you doing out there? Welcome back to the Yama channel. My name is Thinker St. James. This is last week's fights. We are going to be going over all of the fights from UFC 306 as well as Dana White's Contender Series. And with me to do so, as always, is my good friend, the Ohio player, the man who once kissed Sean O'Malley on the back. Chase Parton, how you doing, brother?
We are here after another great week. I know we just talked about how there's a 2-week break after that. So great thing we had an amazing card that I can't wait to talk about.
Well, yeah, I mean that before we even get into the card itself, we got to talk about the presentation of this thing. But just for anyone who's not aware, we are going to be breaking down every single fight from UFC 306, Noche UFC, as well as every fight from Dana White's Contender Series Week 5. If you got anything in the chat that you want to talk about that is not pertaining to the fights we were talking about at that time, put them in the chat and we will come back to it at a later time in the stream. But as I had said, we got to talk about the presentation of the Sphere and how amazing this thing looked. What do you think of this event?
To start off, okay, it first was not all the way on, right? The prelims looked very different from the main card. It started out with just 2 big old screens, and I thought to myself, wait a minute, so just the outside of the Sphere is the light show? Like, yeah, okay, interesting, because it was just like red and mood, you know, like mood and fog, and I was like, oh, okay, but this is still kind of cool. I just don't get why there's just 2 big old screens. And then, you know, you progress through it and they start doing a little different things, and then it starts, and then they actually show you what's inside and like with the capabilities of it. And wow, it really did. It first was cool to see when they didn't even have anything going. But the fact that shit started to happen, it was so cool that I'm as much of a hater as I am. I would have been freaking out with the shit falling and like with all the design. Yeah, no, that would have been crazy for me.
Yeah, I thought about that for at least with the drones. The drones was the thing that I was like, damn, they got drones in a building with people.
Right.
I mean, that just seemed very, very wild to me. But I mean, looking at it, yeah. So as you said, it kind of progressed over the course of the event, like the magnitude of everything sort of like gained in momentum as it went along. And I mean, I'm pretty much exactly what you said. Like from the beginning, I was like, yeah, this is kind of neat. I was like, it doesn't seem like they're using much of the capability here in the beginning. But then that was only pretty much for like the first, I think, 2 fights. And then they did that amazing a curtain reveal basically where they like split the two. I want to call them screens, but they weren't really screens. I guess that they were like maybe LED curtains or something like that. Whatever it was, the waves parted, and you got this. The backdrop started to show, and then just from there, it was just level upon level of amazing things. The entire presentation from front to back. I thought it was extremely proficiently done. They put so much fucking money into this event. We've been hearing throughout the entire lead up to all of this how expensive it was and how expensive the tickets to the event were. I thought that everything worked out amazingly. It's a real testament to the professionalism and talent of everyone who was involved in making that happen. Because as I had mentioned on the last stream, there was a whole different set of technical elements that had to go into making that happen. There were 2 crews for the walkouts, two trucks for the TV broadcast. It was a lot more than what normally goes into a UFC broadcast, and I thought that they pulled it off fantastically. I think that Joe Rogan in the beginning, when the event first started, where they were doing kind of the intro to everything, and he's looking around and his eyes were like bulging out of his skull, I was like, yeah, that's pretty much how everybody feels, and I can't blame him for feeling that way. So really impressive visual presentation from Sphere, as it should be for the amount of money that they put into it and the ticket price attached to it.
I think looking back at an event like UFC 300, right? People were talking about, for example, with the image that they originally had with the gold flag and then everybody's names. They were like, oh, well, it's the UFC. It's not about the fighters or whatever type thing. This one specifically was just not about the fighters. You could have had anybody on this card, obviously not, but like this one lived up to an event like UFC 300 without having the top name people there. Really, like this was so good. I want to rewatch this one. I'm going to make my dad rewatch it with me. I know I said that about 300, but this one for sure I'll have him rewatch.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that you can show to non-fight fans that I think that any human being on the planet can appreciate to an extent, I mean, I guess that's another thing to mention as well. I thought that it was very tastefully presented in the sense of the Mexican heritage and culture. I thought the video interstitials that they had running were very well done. And God, I could only imagine being a person in the venue to see some of those, because the animation looked really great, and floor to ceiling, it's just was spectacular. And then also all of the other kind of peripheral elements that were highlighting and celebrating Mexican culture, I thought were really well done as well, except for one. And it's not like it was a major deal. It just kind of got a little bit goofy. I thought that the ring girls with the multiple outfits got a little bit goofy towards the end, because they had ones that looked like fucking robots at one point, and I was like, I guess that's the future of Mexico. I didn't know what was going on with that.
We can get into this right now, since we'll maybe not remember to get into it later. Yes,
sure.
They were originally really cool. They were like, traditional, like dancer, right, like whatever. And then it got into like, she has like a gun belt, like, she's like a bandito kind of thing, whatever you want to say. And then the next one came out in all gold, and I was like, Mexico gold? I don't know where this one's at.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next one, she came out with spikes, and she was like silver. I was like, I have no idea where this one's at. Where did Mexico and this one happen to meet? Like, Jesus Lord.
It got a little strange, and I also thought that these ring girls were specific to this event. I don't know if they're going to end up doing more events in the future. These ones that were event specific, but. Funnily enough, it kind of showed, because a couple of them were doing that like supermodel runway walk with like the little bit of attitude and all this kind of stuff, and it was like, all right, you might want to tone it down just a little bit. But what a blip of a minor thing to bring up. If that's the worst thing that you can mention about this event, obviously smooth sailing, and it really didn't detract from anything. Although the other thing that I did think was fun. Kendrick Lamar in the building, everybody. How about that?
You know what's crazy is, what if he was in the building too? Like,
Well,
what if they just didn't even get the camera? Like, maybe, okay, one thing to screw it up, but like, what if he actually was? Like, what if he still was in the building and he didn't
that's what I
even get it
thought.
right or
Yeah,
correct it? Like,
yeah, well, that's what I thought. I thought that exact thing. I'm like, first of all, funny that they messed it up. They had Kendrick Lamar graphics on the screen for someone who was clearly not Kendrick Lamar, and then also if he was there, then yeah, I mean, what a snub. At arguably the highest that his fame has been in his career, so it's interesting indeed on that one, but I don't know. I don't know if he actually was there. There were a bunch of stars there. And I also saw that I guess Jake Paul went to the event in disguise because he's been banned from UFC events. Is that true? I don't know.
honestly, I'm surprised you care enough because
I
I
don't I
don't.
don't yeah, I don't care. I happened to see that and I just thought it was kind of funny. But regardless, sorry, whatever. Put all that bullshit to the side. Overall,
Yeah,
the presentation was great. What'd you think about the fights?
fights were okay. Let me actually think. It was actually a really good evolution to the card at the end. Yeah, I can see why people probably would have left a little early, but for me, oh, I kind of love that. I kind of like the card. Whatever it was, it had some good endings to it. The story, maybe not for the Mexican fighters, but like it was a good time.
Yeah, I
Good
guess
thing
that
for the
that
fighters too.
that is a point to mention. Only two of the Mexican fighters on the card ended up taking home W's. But yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think that there was merit to all of the fights. Some of the fights were better than others. So that's pretty much kind of how I looked at it. So overall, not a terrible set of fights, but there were, like I said, it was a little bit of a mixed bag, but we can break them down individually, as of course we're going to here. So let's start it off with a Raul Rosas Jr. versus Ariki Long. Solid chain wrestling from Rosas, as we've come to expect to an extent, but this fight, in my opinion, showed that the kid still needs some work. That would be my overall assessment. What'd you think?
Yeah, we were saying before, like, what maybe it wasn't me and you, maybe it was me and the Discord, but we were talking about like Raul Rosas I just give him more opponents. Like I don't want to see him keep climbing the ranks right now because we're gonna get like fights like this eventually where he's not gonna be a mad dog and come out here and finish. Like I was very surprised, unfortunately, on the card that he was supposed to do the most, for his image, I guess. This one really just didn't live up. It was so bad. Not so bad, but for the first card of the night, Raul was supposed to show out. For arguably not even supposed to be the first card of the night, maybe he should have been. Like, gosh.
Yeah, well, and also for his minus 1100 favorite status as well. Yeah, this was not the best showing on the planet for him. I thought the same thing. He's talking about after he did end up winning the fight, of course, after the decision, he's talking about wanting top 15 competition, and I was like, yeah, let's not get to that point with him just yet. He does need to improve a little bit more. Very little striking in this fight on both sides, less from Ariki Long, and the chain wrestling was solid from Raul Rosas. It was interesting to me that it looked like after the first round where he solidly wrestled his way, to a sizable lead, they struck in the second round a little bit more, and then in the third round, he didn't seem like he had the drive to go out and capitalize on the momentum he had created in those first two rounds. I was expecting the third round. I mean, I was expecting him to come out a lot stronger anyway in this fight in general. I thought he was going to be a little bit more dynamic out the gate, a little bit more measured. But throughout the fight, which he was clearly winning for most of it, he ended up kind of not really going with the same intensity that I was expecting in that third round. And I was surprised by that because I thought that he was doing pretty solid work. I guess you can give Ariki Long one of those rounds, but that third round, he really should have had more of a sense of urgency, in my opinion.
This one was just one of the craziest performances for Raul to claim that he should get 50 G's.
Oh, yeah, come on,
You
please.
you've done a lot better, brother. So Just keep that one in mind for when you're in front of the hometown crowd at the biggest event one time ever. Like you really kind of fumbled. Like, dang, if you would have got a finish on the big screen they were showing it outside on the Sphere, like whatever.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to John Dong. What up, brother? And 46 Vet in the chat asks, do we really think is he a future champion? I mean, based on this specific performance, perhaps not, but I mean, he has ran through other opponents. What do you think about the trajectory now going forward? Do you think that a couple more victories, like with better displays, might lead you to that conclusion later on down the line still, or like does this kind of change your opinion going forward?
Yeah, he's 10-1 still. Like, gosh, plenty of time. 19 years old. I mean, same thing with like the next fight that we're going to talk about. It's like these guys are really young in their career. You can still throw them unranked opponents to see what can happen, and then when they're ready, they'll show us. They'll be on their way.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say that that's probably a pretty fair assessment as well, because we have seen the types of performances that you would want to see out of a future champion. Do I think that he's necessarily going to be the youngest champion? Like beating John Jones to the punch kind of thing. I don't know. I definitely don't think that he's ready for top 15. So if he's not ready for it now, he's got a couple more years to make that happen if he wants to, get up there and still try to chase that dream. But if it takes him a little bit longer, nothing wrong with that either. As we've talked about in the past, the sport evolves very quickly. The sport is a much different place than it was when John Jones was on his initial run and ascension. So I don't think that there's any shame in not being able to surge your way to the belt, coming as a 19-year-old and working through a couple of years. So if it doesn't happen for him, it's definitely not a problem like that. Do I think it's still possible for him? Yeah, I would say down the line, but it is down the line because this performance, this is the type of fight that he really needs to go back and rewatch and kind of see the areas that he needs to work on a little bit more, because this was, again, the odds had him at so high. This has him as a minus 950. My book had him as a minus 1100. The odds were another one where it was supposed to be completely walk through, and that was clearly not the case. So there are just some things that he needs to work on when he's up against guys who are going to give him more problem. And I think that that's where he's starting to come to in his career. He's going to be facing guys who are not going to be giving him their necks so easily.
Yeah, and what was I gonna say? The last thing I want to say, we're going off of this. We're asking if he's future champ material in context of him being the youngest ever. If we just erase that out of our mind, 25, 26 years old, 30, 32 years old, like he's got plenty of time to make something happen. Maybe not youngest if that's the goal and we fall short. I mean, like that's cool. He's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And John, we will talk about the main event a little bit down the line here. So save that question for when we get to it, my dude. We will come back to that. All right, moving on to, I know he's your homie, and he did very well. This is Edgar Chairez versus Josh Van. Get in the van. What'd you think of the fight?
Wow, this was a roller coaster because this was just really scary. Because Josh Van, coming off that short notice, coming into this short notice, coming off a knockout, you could tell that it was still there. I don't know if he's just chinny forever now or if that was just because he just got rocked, a couple months ago, whatever you want to say. But I was worried. I thought it was over. I thought Josh Van hype was out the window if Edgar Chairez was going to come out here and dog him like this. That first round, Edgar Chairez put on a masterclass, really. It was looking really slick. And he's actually one of my favorite fighters now, to be honest with you. Like, this dude is a dog.
He's tough.
But that second round, Josh Van said, no. I'm coming back and I'm putting it on you. And then shout out to Edgar Chairez for not even going down after that, too, because he almost knocked Josh Van down and made him wobble with a spinning back fist, and it was a crazy back and forth. That's really what it was.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as you said, Josh coming on short notice, looking really, really fresh for the amount of time he had to train. Apparently, he was doing shots when he got the call. So, I mean, this dude talk about off the couch. That's pretty much as to the T as you can get with that. First round I gave to Shirez. Looked really nice in that first round. That second round was fucking wild. Van starts to lay on some heavy combos at close range. Shirez lands a spinning back fist to swing the momentum. Van comes back, then Shirez comes back and guillotines. The whole thing was fucking really, really nuts. It was a crazy momentum swing on both directions. Nice for Van to be able to navigate all of that. They were saying on the commentary that he had that like low IQ move in the third, I believe it was, where I guess he was on top, and I forget what he did that made them say that, but it was strange to me to hear that about Josh Van, because he doesn't seem to have very low fight IQ to me, so maybe it was just something that was kind of a mistake instance or whatever, or Shirez was just doing some decent work that kind of threw him off. But overall, I mean, I think a pretty solid performance in general. Close fight. Overall, I say I gave Shirez that first round. Van got the last two. Nice body shots for Josh Van as well. That's another note I wanted to make. I appreciate him mixing it up to the body. That's pretty much about it. Nice short notice win for him, coming in as a favorite on short notice. That's a pretty impressive feat in and of itself.
Yeah, for sure. It does show that like he really is still on his way up. Like if you think about it, short notice, he comes in, he fights all the way to the bell and is leading the charge. Very high output. He's wrestling. I made a point too when I rewatched. In the third round after all of this, he was still able to pick Edgar Chairez up and put him on his butt in the third round. So Josh Van is really a freak athlete, really. I mean, that's what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And very nice to see him course correct after the knockout from Charles Johnson. That in a fight that he was doing pretty well in also. These are the learning experiences, those types of fights. And hopefully, it's like you said, is he just chinny? I mean, that might be a slight concern going forward, where your money's going to go betting in the future. Be aware of it, I guess. But as I said, the reason I brought up the thing with the fight IQ is that I don't think he has a super low fight IQ. I think that he's a pretty sound fighter. Like his decision making is pretty sound, in my opinion, based on what I've seen of him. So I would say that he's still a pretty live bet. It just depends on who he's going to be fighting in the future and, how he looks on the day of. So this was really nice for him. Glad to see that he was able to come back into the win column after getting knocked out. You always want to see that for guys because, the knockouts can change people. It's true. It's conventional wisdom, but it's that way for a reason.
So you're asking who he fights next, and anything like that. Is Cody Durden and him? They both just came off of wins after being knocked out. I think this is a good matchup that can finally happen for him. Now that Makayev is out the picture, we don't really need to worry about him matching up with anybody lower. Cody Durden, you don't need to talk shit on Twitter. Josh Van, same thing. You guys can just get after it, and I can't wait to see that one. That would be interesting to see the odds.
Yeah, for sure. I know that fight had been floated. I think it was Van himself who might have been floating that one.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason why not. I think that's a good competitive match. I would be very nervous of Durden's wrestling if I was Van in that instance. But if he can get to him with the hands quick, that's the one thing about Josh Van is that he is very comfortable staying in the pocket. Man, this guy will. That's kind of why if he is a little bit chinny, that would concern me just because he's a walk forward kind of guy, heavy pressure and willing to take a shot even if it might be against his better his better decision making on that. But either way, if he can touch him up, like you said, Durden just got knocked out not too long ago himself. I think that's an interesting match.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, very much so. Give Van the belt. See, he's not ranked right now, is he, or is he?
No,
he's not.
yet.
Yeah, And Durden is though. So that
No, he got
he's
not.
not.
He was 15 and then got
Oh, he
knocked
got
out.
knocked out of the rankings. Ah, okay, all right. So maybe the two of them can duke it out to try to get a number next to their name.
We'll
Cool.
see.
Yeah, I mean that would make sense. All right, moving on. This is Caitlin Sosa versus Yasmin Higari. The rare female growing strike made an appearance for both ladies in this fight. Vad shots for both sides.
Yeah, that was honestly, you don't see it too often, and they were like stabs too. They weren't like they were cooch stabs. So that one was interesting to see. And to make a point, this is why you don't bet women's MMA if you're not a professional, because plus 400 just to get finished in the first round, or well, minus 600 to get finished by the plus 400 in the first round, man. It's how the sport goes. It's crazy,
Yeah,
like
and
who expected it?
no, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and these odds are a lot closer. I mean, these might be like straight closed odds, or I don't know how ESPN is getting theirs or where they get them from, or whatever. My book had Sosa as a plus 650, so that would have been crazy nice money on that one. But yeah, I mean, really, if it really is a coin flip for the majority of WMMA. Short money on the dog, man. That's the way to go. Straight bets, no parlays. But yeah, this was a really nice performance for Sosa. I mean, she's got some nice striking too, on top of her very quick ability to recognize and capitalize on the rear naked. But she had to have the striking first to get her to that point. Left hook did it, man. I mean, she really she showed some nice skills in this one. Higari, I mean, she was not terrible with her striking before all that went down. It just didn't look like she had the same power that Sosa did. And I think had she not taken that one shot, it might have been something that could have over time added up for her. She might have been able to point her way a little bit more, wear Sosa down, but that left hook landed, and that's all that you needed. So yeah, this was a really nice one for Sosa. That was a good way to make a name for yourself on a very big platform, considering how big of an underdog that she was.
No, yeah. And it's these Brazilians, man. They come in here, these Brazilian women, they can throw hands. And when they get it, when they're able to land flush strikes, I mean, it's crazy what they can do. And then that's let alone from what they can do when they get a hold of your neck. So shout
Yeah,
out her for finishing this fight, because we needed it. After
abs-
the first fight, it was a little slow. Second fight was a dog fight. We needed another one to keep us high on the energy. So this
yeah,
was good.
absolutely. Yeah, most definitely. And one other thing, I mean, not to keep bringing it back to pussy, but let me let me do just that. Apparently, the women don't often wear groin protection at all, which I was very surprised by. I thought that they were at least wearing like a soft cup of some sort, but at least according to the commentary, I don't know if that's 100% accurate or 100% across the board, but DC and Joe Rogan were commenting on that because of both of them taking groin strikes, that they don't wear protection, and that just sounded a little bit off. I would suspect that there needs to be some sort of female cup if they're not all wearing one. I mean, it just seems like common sense to me that, like I said, at least a soft cup, at least some kind of athletic strap for the ladies would seem to be in order. I can't believe that they're not in a sport as crazy as MMA.
Yeah, maybe a weird thing, but you maybe answered your own question when you said DC and Rogan were discussing this.
Good point.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
for
too
sure.
sure.
Yeah,
Maybe
so
if
we'll
Laura comes in one day and gives us a real breakdown of how she did it, I don't know, but other than that, we'll wait.
yeah, for sure. And that's what I was kind of getting at too. I think that it might not necessarily be across the board for all women that they're just going out there bare, but
Yeah, I
It
mean,
would.
they talked to Chris Cyborg probably, and they were like, "Oh, well, there you go. That's good enough."
Right, yeah, right, exactly. But yeah, I would think that that should probably be something that's just regularly implemented for women in general, for the exact reason that we saw here. I mean, uh, actually, if you go back and watch the reactions to those shots, Higari made some interesting sounds for her. She gave quite a yelp after she got hers. So
Nice.
yeah, it's obviously not something that you want to have happen. As men, we know how that is. It's not pleasant, and I can only imagine for ladies, it's probably just as bad or whatever, their version of bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, off of that subject, moving on to Ignacio Bahamondes versus Manuel Torres. Yo, dude, this Bahamondes guy, bro, performance of the night winner there.
Yeah, this dude coming in at a dog. I mean, not a big dog, but slight. And this would have been really good money to make because wow, Ignacio, it was just textbook once he realized that Manuel was overextending and he was tired and he was just trying to throw it at the out the window. Like, bro, he just stepped back and popped him twice with the same shot. I love when trying to think what his damn name is. Brendan Fitzgerald maybe normally says 2 shots on a Saturday night. That's all you need. It was what it was, man. It was nice.
Yeah. So, Torres was reaching for sure, and that's just because Bahamondes was nice with his distance management. Um, he got a couple of them. What I liked about Torres earlier, before the sequence that ended it, was that he did end up finding the target with some of the strikes eventually. Like he would kind of reach out with a shot, and then if he didn't catch that one, he would follow it up with what would be a combo had both of them landed, but usually it was just the single landing because he still caught the one that was at the range that he could get to. So I mean, I thought that it was some decent work from a guy who was having to chase a little bit, but it didn't end up mattering in the end when Bahamondes ended up getting that left to drop him first. Torres recovered a little bit there, and then a heavy, heavy right. Just, that was a no mas situation at that point. So, yeah, really nice work for Ignacio Bahamondes out of Santiago, Chile.
Yeah, Chile's nice, man. I like to hear that, especially when you don't hear many people come out of these areas, and then you got somebody come out and against the home crowd, you put on a show and you end it, an exclamation. So good
For
for him.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I guess we're going to just have to see. I mean, lightweight, so tough a division to be in, but I would think that a performance like that will get him a decent name. We'll see what happens with Bahamondes going forward.
I hear it was actually supposed to be Daniel Zellhuber before
I
Manuel. So
I had heard that too. Yeah, yeah, that would certainly have been an interesting fight as well, as we'll get to that fight coming up here in a little bit. But before we get to that, we've got Irene Aldana versus Norma Dumont. Now, this is the first fight that had a little bit of weirdness to it. Yeah, go. What'd you think of the fight overall?
this fucking fight, they had the nerve to talk about the main card and the main event and the co-main, but this fight was so boring. Oh my gosh, I don't care about the headbutt. I don't care about the blood. That was ridiculous. This Norma Dumont is just not very good in my opinion. She ran away the entire fight. She did not do a thing that made me think that whenever somebody stops her from running, that she's going to be able to like actually win because and then the only damaging shot she had again was a headbutt. And other than that, I just wasn't she kept doing oh my gosh, she's one of those women that like makes very very loud noises when she punches, and the fact that she wasn't punching the way that I liked, it was just annoying. That's all I got to say. Like think about this, like they're going to sit here. This is I want to actually make this point. Look at the scoring here. They're going to sit here and say every one of her strikes were significant. Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's great. Same with Irene. I mean, that one's just kind of weird. I mean, whatever.
I don't know. I see it a little bit differently. I mean, I can see where you're coming from. Dumont moves a lot. She is a very, very always in motion kind of fighter. Um, I would say that she did some decent work off of the back foot, which is what kind of made the difference there. She picked some nice shots because really it was a lot of counter striking when Aldana had to chase. I mean, that I think is the biggest note for Aldana in this one was that she wasn't cutting her off, and because of that, she was always having to try to keep up, and she was just one step behind. She was reaching for some far shots that just weren't there, and Dumont was able to capitalize on that pretty effectively throughout most of the fight. Now, I think that the clash of heads that opened up Aldana in the late second round was the Anik on commentary said that the judges, will be made aware that it was a clash of heads. It's like, I don't care what you say, that there's no way that that type of cut with that much blood plus the additional damage that was laid onto it was not going to sway the judges. It's just, it has to be that way. So it was very unfortunate that that was the case. And I mean, how closely I follow commission affairs and stuff like that when it comes to this sport. This was an absolute failure on the commission's part. I have no idea how it was possible that no one thought that it was appropriate to bring the doctor in after that second round. That cut was deep and bleeding like crazy from the second that it opened. And they just let that third round start. Herb Dean didn't think to bring the doctor in at any point after the third round had already started, when it was bleeding all over the place and had taken a little bit more damage. You showed it to me after the fact, but I had seen it a couple of places as well. The picture that was going around after all of the damage was said and done. I mean, that was horror movie levels of injury. That's the plastic surgery that Aldana is going to need for that. I mean, it's really, really nuts. So I think that this was just a very a really bad look for the commission. And I mean, talk about blood everywhere. You never want to see one person's blood tracked all over the mat and on their opponent. And that was absolutely what happened here. Dumont was bloody as hell, none of it being hers, or maybe a very little bit.
I would like to refute and say that I don't think that at the second round it should have been stopped, because at the end of the round, okay, there's a cut, it's bleeding, you can tell it's a pretty bad cut, but it's in the center of her forehead at this point. This is nothing right here, okay? It can bleed, it can do whatever. It's not near her eye, it's not near like any yada yada yada. Now, when she left the corner, they did not put any Vaseline on her fucking head. That was the problem. There was no glob. There was no nothing that they put over. She walked right out there and it started bleeding immediately. Now, at the end of the third round, I will say somebody should have been able to clock this. The referee maybe should have been able to see this, because the cut was no longer just right here. It's going down into her nose area, like around her eye. Like, when the doctor was touching her fucking head and like poking it and pulling it apart and pulling it back, like one, what he's doing is disgusting. Two, the color of flesh when it is like separated and like dying off, like, wow, she wanted it. She was down for it. I don't know why this is ridiculous, but I don't think it should have been stopped at the second round. Maybe middle of the third round, once we saw her licking her blood. That was probably the end right there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I will give you that maybe it was okay to start the round. It had not opened as much as it would eventually open up. But, I mean, by the maybe midpoint of that third round, it was quite obvious to me that thing, I mean, it was a gusher. That thing was just going all over the place. I've seen a lot of really bad cuts in this sport. That might be among the worst that I've seen. And also, we were talking about this just recently, where I forget what fight it was. I think it was one of the Road to the UFC guys who had gotten cut, and Kerry Hatley was the referee, and like he called the doctor in for a second, like, and the doctor was like, yeah, it's fine, let's just keep going or whatever. Like, had that been the case, then fine, not a problem. You know what I mean? Like, it's I don't think it's a bad thing to check with the doctor in a circumstance like that where there is blood going everywhere, all up in her eyes. And, you know, as you said, Aldana is one of the toughest women in this sport, in my opinion. She had the banger fight with Carol Hosa. As I said, one of my favorite women's fights of all time. I would say Hall of Fame worthy fight personally. I heard John Anik on commentary saying that he thought that fight was fight of the year last year. Maybe not that level necessarily, but certainly one that should be in the conversation for that year. Aldana is just a super, super tough, extremely durable fighter, and she's not going to be the one to complain. She's not going to be the one that's going to want to stop the fight ever. So I understand her continuing on and wanting to do it, but sometimes you need to save these fighters from being too tough for their own good. I think that probably was a circumstance that it should have happened there. At the very least, somewhere early in the third round, you know, somewhere around the midpoint at the least.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, yeah. But, I mean, you know, as I was saying, I know that you feel differently. I thought Dumont was kind of nice with her movement and nice with the strikes that she did get off. I thought that she landed a couple of decent ones, and kept out of striking range for a lot of what Aldana was throwing. And, you know, sometimes it's not always the most impressive or explosive, but it gets the job done. So if that cut had not happened, this fight could have been a lot different. You know, there's nothing to say that had the cut not occurred, that Aldana might not have been able to get some better work done, or the work that she would have been able to do could have been enough to at least sway that one round, perhaps. I think it is a little unfortunate as well because had this cut, well, I guess not, because if this cut had stopped the fight, it would already have been past the midway point of the fight. It would have been a TKO for Dumont, so at least it would have saved Aldana some pain and necessary surgery. But it could have at least gotten her a little bit less of what ultimately became one of the nastiest injuries that I've ever seen.
100%.
Yeah. So anyway, that was that one. I do believe it was a failure on the commission's part, though, and I am, of course, very critical of those. So we'll leave that one there. All right, moving on to this is generally he has the tendency that I've seen at least to be a little more calculated. I thought. Or maybe that's just a false memory that I have. But I thought that he looked pretty good in that first part of the fight. And then, I mean, you know, Rodriguez finally able to figure it out going forward thereafter. But he looked pretty hurt there for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, to Anakin's point, Lazy Boy didn't look great in that first round, I will say. After all that hype that he came out doing, dancing, you know, getting the crowd on their feet, I give him that. Especially after being the first one that we get to see with the spectacle, you know, the 3D holograms floating around, which was cool. But brother, he got dropped bad. He was lights out, unconscious, and he got put into some pretty deep submissions too. Maybe two of them. Yeah, there was one that was a triangle, and he was almost cooked in there. Lucky he had like his little hand tucked, but like he wasn't moving, so it was tough. But this one was a good fight. I do think the right decision was made, of course, but that first round was very, very competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had that same note too, that the triangle was really nice, looked really tight, and I was amazed that he was able to get out of that. I mean, it looked more to me like Osborne might have just let him go from it, and I'm like, why in God's name would you do that if that was the case? It looked like a perfect triangle. I mean, he could have just sat there with it. I mean, granted, Rodriguez was trying to flip himself around, so I mean, he might have just gotten into an angle that didn't feel like it was working for Osborne anymore, but I mean, that thing looked pretty goddamn tight, as was the guillotine that he was in the second round. So Yeah, Lazy Boy not looking super, super sharp throughout the entirety of this. Got himself in some bad positions, but I mean, in those times, it is nice to see a guy who was able to navigate some opposition that looks like it could be fight ending. I mean, this is what you're going to be experiencing with high level fighters as you go up throughout your career. So, I think that showed his tenacity for sure. After, yeah, like I mean, it's great that the referees were giving the leeway to some of these guys because there were a couple of them. This one being one of them where a different referee might have called the fight early, and that would have been unfortunate. But that being said, you did get knocked. You got knocked down, man. I mean, like that's it. It would have sucked, but it wouldn't have been all that surprising based on the ton of bricks that you looked like going to the ground. So, yeah, no, I'm glad he was able to navigate.
I think there was definitely a quota that if you have an early stoppage on any of these fights, you are cooked in the fryer. Mexicans don't give up. You are not going to let them. You're going to let them fight no matter what. Hence with the Aldana fight. Hence with this one, this dude is like unconscious in the middle of falling. And just don't stop the fights early. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that I did want to mention was that I thought it was interesting. They talked about it on commentary a little bit too. Is that Rodriguez he locks in the body triangle, and that dude will not give up the body triangle for nothing, man. I mean, he had the body triangle locked in when he was on top. He was on the side. He's locking it in. This thing was like so tightly bound to Osborne, and it was like one of those things where I was curious if there was a definitive reason for that aside from just trying to keep control, because at points it almost looked like it might have been working against him, especially when he was on top, because when Osborne is down on his stomach and he's got the foot hooked in the crook of the leg, behind the knee, it almost looked like he's trapping his own leg and not letting himself have full range of motion in that circumstance. So just an interesting thing to point out that might end up tripping him up a little bit in the future if he's in a situation where that's not so favorable for him. But just something interesting I saw in that.
Yeah, definitely. It was weird. He did hold. I can attest to what you're saying because he was holding in the body triangle to a point that was so long that Ode Osborne was turning himself in it, and like he was sideways smushed into the body triangle. It was kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, a little bit interesting in that regard. I do know that he takes his wrestling pretty seriously, so that might have really just been kind of a holdover of him being like, I got to keep this, I got to do this, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of something that he thought was the right way to go, even if it might not have been the smartest for every single sequence. But in the end, still got the win. Definitely a close fight, though. Not mad at the decision, but yeah, it was. I would say, I guess, really what my biggest takeaway was is that I thought that Osborne did better than I had expected him to. I kind of had an impression in my mind that Osborne was a bit of a bum. I think I even said that on this show. So nice performance for Osborne overall, and again, very close fight. Wouldn't have been too mad had it gone the other way. Honestly, it was that close.
These flyweights, they will, a lot of them can shock you. I mean, age is, a factor in a lot of different cases. Some of these flyweights will come out and they can give you a good round or two,
Yeah, most definitely. So good fight though. I mean, definitely entertaining and keeping the momentum even without a finish. So just like this next fight that we're going to talk about, this is Daniel Zellhuber versus Esteban Ribovics. I mean, this fight was 100% trading from start to finish. What a competitive fight this eventually became. I want to make this note early on, is that I mean, Joe Rogan was hyping this fight as like one of the best that he's ever seen. People online I've heard kind of parroting that. I mean, do you agree with that assessment? I thought this was a great fight, but I thought that it was really mostly the third round that was like the greatness of the fight, and a lot of solid trading, but not necessarily. I wouldn't put it in like the upper echelon. It's not touching the fucking BMF fight. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I just what do you think?
This was a good fight. I think, again, like you said, this was maybe a fight where a round or two makes us think the whole fight was a lot better than it is.
Right.
So, like with the Josh Van thing, that fight was a banger. Josh fight, Edgar Chairez was great. I rewatched it yesterday morning. I can understand that the whole fight wasn't just what round 2 was, you know?
Sure.
So this one I think is the same. Is like maybe the end of round 2, round 3 was really, really solid. So, but what I want to say, Esteban Ribovics, I want to give you your props because I am a fan. I got the Argentinian flag for you, you and Eileen.
Nice.
But I was not thinking you would come out here and perform like this. I said on the predictions, the knockout on Terrence McKinney, maybe fluky because that dude is not very reliable on, durability. And it was like a quick first round, blah, blah, blah. And that was his only first round knockout in the UFC. That was his only knockout in the UFC. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is a lob for Daniel Zellhuber. But wow, was he able to bring it for 3 rounds, expel all of his energy, and then somehow come out with more? Like, Esteban Ribovics, he is really that guy. Even though I do believe he lost this matchup, I think Daniel Zellhuber won this. I thought he won the first 2 very convincingly. Third round, maybe he got, work put on him, but that was, in my eyes, at the end, it was just like, don't get finished, you won the fight. Like, easy. So, Esteban, shout out you, but I think Daniel won this one, in my opinion.
I mean, it was a split decision. So, that I guess there's some credence to that. I would say that Ribovics ramped up the output and accuracy throughout the fight, which I really did like. He's got some really nice body shots as well. Zellhuber has some really nice kicks, but Ribovics was kind of wise to some of those kicks. I thought he threw a really, really nice question mark kick, my favorite kick of them all. And I mean, Ribovics was just really, he was locked in. I mean, he was very keenly aware of everything that was going on in this fight, to the point that I think that he slightly edged it, but it was very close, obviously. That third round, of course, was all fireworks. That is very much true. The elbow that dropped Ribovics was beautiful. I mean, that was just so well placed by Zellhuber. I really I thought that might have been the beginning of the end there, but Ribovics, he rallies back, starts landing heavy, and the sequence that he put on, like thereafter, after he had kind of hurt Zellhuber, he was punching like a fucking machine, man. I mean, like, it was like almost looked mechanical. You know what I mean? The striking that he was doing was just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, like, it was just in like that very rhythmic type of output. I was very impressed by that. As you said, close fight. I do give it to Ribovics. I think he did just enough, but it really was just enough because it was so close. And yeah, I coming off of the assessment after the Terrence McKinney fight, which I had said, don't judge Ribovics strictly off of knocking Terrence McKinney's head off, right? I mean, that's you can't just go off of that type of a knockout to create your entire assessment of everything. This fight definitely showed that this guy is, he's the real deal. And I thought Zellhuber showed that he's the real deal too, honestly. I think that this is one of those fights that really, it doesn't have a loser. It's definitely a fight that's going to stick around in a lot of people's mind. We got Anakin in the chat saying that he thought it was fight of the year. So I like I had said at the beginning of this, that a lot of people did think that. yeah, I don't see any any reason that neither of these guys should have their stocks drop off of this one. It should only go up for both of them. So yeah, good fight overall. I don't agree with it being heralded as like this world ender fight. If you look at like the pantheon of great fights that we've had in this sport, it's it's somewhere in there, but it's not necessarily the highest of the high. Either way, great fight, and one that really hyped the crowd up because we were going through a couple of decent ones, and this kept the momentum going.
100%.
All right, so let's move on to another interesting fight, crazy performance. This is Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez. Brian down after the first shot of the fight. What'd you think?
I made the Discord really mad because they wanted Brian Ortega to win, of course. And they were all butthurt when I said it is completely over after Diego Lopez dropped a nuclear fucking missile on this dude. Not just one, but two. And I don't know if you saw the video, dude. He hit him. Okay. The first shot knocked Brian Ortega out, right? And like you see him falling. The second shot wakes him up, dude. I don't know if, bro, I can't believe you haven't seen the video yet. It is actually insanity to think about. He got hit so hard. He got brain rattled back into place. Like, it was so wild. This dude, Diego Lopez, questionable cardio. I can still agree with that, but he's fine. He can drop nukes. It's okay.
I thought that his cardio held up pretty decently. I mean, it wasn't. He had pulled away so far ahead by the third round that I don't think that even if he had been a little bit drained, it was going to make much of a difference. That's my biggest note, was that I don't know if it was the shot. I don't know if it was the physique, which had been called into question, so to speak, before this fight for Brian Ortega. But Brian looked drained and sluggish basically from the start of this fight. I mean, like, the shot, of course, didn't help that. But, I guess we'll never know how he would have looked otherwise. But regardless, after that shot, after him recovering as we all knew that he would, I mean, Brian Ortega is a guy that does not know how to stay down. He is zombie mode 100%. He will not die. That all being said, and it's all admirable qualities, but he just looked really, really one step behind for, from the start of this thing. And yeah, that the first one dropped him. Second one, like, it might have bounced him back, but he was not, there was no freshness left there. And the other big note for me is that Diego looked so locked in this fight, man. I mean, like, any criticisms that he might have had earlier in his career, because they talked about it on the commentary that, coming into the organization, loses on the Contender Series, loses his first fight in the organization. These growing pains, he has worked past so much of that to become the fighter that he is now. He's constantly getting better, and that was the thing that I was going to say about the gas. I thought that he looked pretty decent definitely compared to his last fight, compared to the Dan Ige fight where he was visibly fading. I think that he held up pretty well gas tank wise. I mean, it can be a little bit better for sure. Granted, he wasn't getting a lot back from Brian at that point, in the third round, but it looked like at least a slight improvement to me. So Diego is him, that's all you can say about that, right?
I agree. 30-26 by one judge. So shout out Diego.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well. I felt a little bit bad that they 30-26 to my boy T City, but it had to happen at least for one judge. And I don't even necessarily think that it's that wrong. And then I guess one other note that is kind of crazy. How about this guy Diego Lopez going to the back, getting changed, and right back out in the corner for Alexa Grasso in the next fight? What a Chad!
Yeah, front row seat to what we'll talk about here in a second.
Yes, indeed. So, well, I mean, and one last thing I did want to say, Diego Lopez with a number 3 next to his name now. What are you thinking on that front?
That he has to figure out what the fuck he's about to do because he ain't getting no title shot anytime soon. Like Ilya is fighting Max, then Volk has got his shot, and then Volk may or may not have a fight before or after that. So, brother, you got some time to wait. You better start thinking about fighting Dan Ige again on a full camp or something.
I mean, it wouldn't be the worst thing, but yeah, that is the point. Is that the division is in a little bit of gridlock right now because of the fights that you just mentioned. We got a lot going on at the top. The division featherweight right now is looking a lot like where middleweight was at before the shake. Before things started finally shaking up, where you had DDP, Sean Strickland, Izzy, that whole little dynamic that was there that was kind of causing a little bit of a gridlock. That I think that's where featherweight is at right now. So there's going to be a little bit of time to see what happens going forward, but Lopez just has to stay the course if he's going to stay active, which I would suspect that he will because he's that type of guy. Yeah, it's just gonna. We'll see what the matchmaking ends up being like. Larry saying Lopez versus the winner of Mofsar versus Aljo, or sit out and wait for a title shot. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably somewhat of a decent assessment. I don't think that he sits out though. I think that's really what I'm getting at is that he's that guy, man. He wants to be active. He wants to be out there proving himself time and time again. He's been doing that, and now he's just got a little bit of time to wait while the top of the division shakes out. But it is going to be a little bit of time because there are fights that need to happen before any type of motion is going to happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of people like, Anakin just brought up Josh Emmett. Like, I mean, we got a lot of people, Josh Emmett, Bryce Mitchell. These are people that could just have a shot at getting closer to, higher ranks while the belt is in fucking limbo. So we'll see. Because Diego right now, like, what's that? 6 fight win streak? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 fight win streak. Yeah. 3 finishes, 2 sub. Or no, 3 finishes, 2 decisions. That's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the other side of the coin, Brian Ortega, I don't know, man. I mean, he had been or at least he in his last fight against Yair Rodriguez came back after some crazy opposition, which was amazing. But how much longer is he able to do that? How many different opponents can he do that against? And also, really, I think the bigger point from that is how can he continue to take the damage that he had been taking between that fight, this fight, and any of the other fights where he's taken significant damage throughout his career? Does he just keep going with all that? Does he stay at featherweight and try to make that continue on? I mean, like he's a little bit of a question mark right now. And the other part of that with him, and I don't bring this up to be rude at all or talk about it in a negative light because I don't think that it is, but he has talked about in the past having, some mental hurdles to overcome. A loss like that, a very definitive loss. You saw that clip of him going after the guy in the crowd when that dude was yelling at him about Tracy Cortez. I don't know how all of that factors in. I'm just putting it out there as things that are factors, and I'm curious as to how the future is going to look for him. So I don't know. And do you have an opinion about that?
No, not really. I guess we're just going to see how it shakes up. Like Anakin said, he's going to go to lightweight most likely. And then if he fights Gamrot, wow, interesting. I wouldn't give a shit. I would probably root for Brian Ortega.
You are a Gamrot hater.
Yeah, no, I was actually starting to like him a little bit, and then he lost, and I thought he was kind of robbed, and now I think I'm more of a fan thinking that he should have won rightfully on his last one.
Fair. All right, fair enough. Well, we shall see what the future holds there. Let's move on.
That's actually a great point, Larry. Let me hit that last one real quick. Brian Ortega
sure.
needs to put the Fortnite down. He needs to put the Fortnite down, get off the gaming system, go to the gym. That fat fuck. Okay, moving on.
Is he a big Fortnite guy? Is that the deal?
And in Embedded, he was like, all they need to do is give me Fortnite, and they know that. I'll go to any press conference. If I can bring Fortnite, I'm good to go. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. Well, good point then. um, yeah, because I mean, he did look. I think that people were unnecessarily judging him off of his physique, but after we saw what we saw, the hindsight might be a little 2020 on that one,
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to the co-main event here. This is Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko, Part 3. I mean, what do you say about this fight? I saw earlier John in the chat saying that we could just skip over this one because there's nothing to talk about. I don't think that that's necessarily true, but it was not the most exciting fight on the planet.
Yeah, I might be able to make it quick because this one is not the greatest, but it did serve me right with everything that I said. After I took some careful consideration and looked through the numbers, Alexa Grasso is the biggest BJJ fraud in this fucking division. This is crazy to me because, and it showed. And I said this, I took a shot and I said, Alexa Grasso, fraud, 2 subs in the UFC, 1 being Shevchenko on a mistake that she knows she made. Sure. Now we see that bitch threw up so many sub attempts and Shevchenko just powered through and just stayed on top of her the entire time. Shevchenko actually almost subbed her too, which was my theory. I thought she was going to get her back, and I almost looked like a genius about round 4. So the fact Grasso stayed on the bottom, didn't throw up any submissions that were worth it, maybe one with some 1 or 2, but Grasso got exactly what she needed. This just proves my point. Now, okay, not my point, but I do understand now. Last year, when they gave a draw, it was clearly because they had plans for UFC Noche and they needed a title contender there. Blah 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 blah.
Come on.
I'm serious at this point. I am so serious because wow, did that look so one-sided, 50-45 across the board, which keep in mind that 50-45 when we talk about the next fight in the scoring on that one.
Yeah, for sure.
But this fight was exactly what Shevchenko did. People are mad that she's coming back because she's boring. I'm ready for the GOAT status to start like reigning in. Like she's what, 36? First off, that ain't even that old. But yeah, not even that old. And she's gonna do great. She's gonna keep the belt for a little longer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so Alexa did have some nice submission attempts. I thought that when she was going for the armbar, it could have worked out a little bit better for her if she was able to pry those hands, but of course Val is just too good for that. So that it was all non-starters. It was unfortunate that she wasn't able to keep it on the feet a little bit more. Again, this entire fight was all ground, all ground, but it wasn't exactly lay and pray. I mean, Valentina was doing some decent work on top and getting out of every one of the submission attempts. During the watch along, I remember remarking to Vitz King saying, how much longer can Valentina keep escaping these? Well, the answer is forever. So, I mean, obviously you let her have it a little bit there. I mean, they were saying on commentary that she is a boxer. She's a striker. She's not necessarily the the great submission artist that her victory over Valentina would lead one to believe. Of course, like you said, it was a mistake on Valentina's part that she recognized and learned from. That last fight was so much more competitive as far as it going everywhere and just being kind of an all-over competition. This nowhere near that. It was unfortunate. I mean, Alexa's corner even told her that the fight was boring. Like that, I don't think I've ever heard that in a fight before. The corner of one of the fighters telling them, "Yo, this fight is boring. You need to make this more entertaining."
There's a corner moment that we'll talk about next fight that was even worse than that. But I think the second fight between these two was absolutely great. One of the first fights that I streamed live. I enjoyed watching that from start to finish, and I do believe Shevchenko was robbed. But the fact that she knew that she couldn't go out here and have a decision that the judges could have
for sure
a side to pick on.
Yeah.
Like she had to dominate, and like that is boring, unfortunately. And we're in the era of boring domination.
I
Like
mean,
that's what the rule book is giving the wins to. So you gotta play by it.
yeah, I mean that is becoming more and more apparent with each title that changes hands now. Between Bilal, the next fight we'll talk about, this one, it's certainly looking that way, and now we've got Umar coming into the fold as well. But we'll get to that in a minute. The only other note that I had was that it was as always kind of cool to see Valentina bust out the perfect Spanish in her post fight interview. She is a multi-linguist, very, very intelligent woman on top of being a great fighter. Uh, there's really not much else to say about it. I mean, dominant performance for her. The scorecards tell the story, and yeah, was it a little boring? Sure, but at the end of the day, that is one of the best female mixed martial artists ever to live in Valentina Shevchenko, so you got to give it to her. And I saw a little bit earlier in the chat that Anakin floated Grasso versus Natalia Silva. I think that is a great fight, so I would like to see that one.
I can agree. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Grasso needs to go to Dagestan. Yeah, maybe learn a
I mean,
fucking double leg defense.
yeah. The ease of takedown was a little bit noticeable at times, but nothing like the ease of takedown that we'll talk about in the main event here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. It is Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili. I wanted to make this point before we even get too deep into it, shouting out to my co-host, Chase Parton, because on last week's show, you had mentioned that, and you were talking about how unfortunate it would be to see Sean O'Malley crumbling mentally in this fight if it was a pressure-heavy fight from Merab. I think that was a Mystic Chase moment because Sean looked mentally defeated in this fight almost from the start of it. I rewatched it pretty intently. I mean, I rewatched it like with the benefit of the hindsight, having seen it once before. And honestly, I mean, I don't know. Sean just looked off in general. Like even from before the fight started, he looked a little bit shaky, a little bit. I don't want to say the word nervous. Nervous has a lot of is kind of a loaded word. It's got a lot of implications to it, but he didn't look like he was completely locked in, like he was this the world ender fighter that he believes himself to be. And from round one all the way on, it was just the Merab show. I also guess I got to pat myself on the back just a little bit in the fact that I had said Merab's pressure is different than Aljo's pressure. And anybody who thought that the fight with Aljo was going to be a good predictor of how Sean O'Malley was going to be able to deal with this fight was sorely mistaken. In fact, I have a friend who we talk about our predictions and picks and stuff, and he was saying that he was going to go with Sean. And I said the same thing to him. I was like, if you're just basing it on how he reacted to Aljo's shots, to Aljo's pressure, you're in for a very rude awakening here. I was proven right on all of that. So other than that, though, going into the actual fight itself, this was just a fucking weird affair. I would say that this fight almost had somewhat of cursed vibes from almost the very beginning of it. The start of it was Sean's corner, I guess, jawing at Merab yelling back, both Merab and Tim Welch getting warnings from Herb Dean, and then the craziness only amplified thereafter. So why don't you go ahead and take it?
Yeah, I want to say that from what it looked like to me, and now Sean did crumble, and the fact that any single judge gave him any round of these is absolutely ridiculous. That this was a 50-45 if I've ever seen it. This was so bad on Sean's part that it made me think that he was injured. Like, I know he was injured against Aljo, whatever, rib cramp or rib strain, whatever. But the way that he just wasn't initiating any striking combinations, like he was only sniping to the body from the outside. Right hand, snipe to the body from the outside. Like, I don't know why he wasn't like stepping forward, trying to bust up a jab. Sean's got quick lightning hands. Like, he is a sniper. Like, what happened that, like, what made him have to just become, like, the fact that people would always be like, oh, Sean's got good grappling. Like, he won that one tournament or whatever. It's like, yeah, with a guillotine, and he didn't do none of that shit here. He didn't do a goddamn thing. He didn't do a thing in this. Like, holy shit, there's the meme where it's the dude poking the stick, and he's like, come on, do something. Like
Yeah.
Jesus.
No, I agree. Yeah. So I mean, Larry's saying that Sean looked hesitant. I think that he was I think that it's really more of a credit to Merab's style, which, love it or hate it, is extremely effective in a fight like this, and also very hard in general to compensate for. Merab is a fighter that he will stay on the outside for as long as he wants. He'll be outside, 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 let you do whatever you're going to do. And then the second that he is inside, he is all pressure to the point that it is overwhelming. I mean, I think that that's a lot of what happened in this fight, regardless of how Sean came into it. Let's for the sake of argument, let's say that Sean was 100% on, that he was, in perfect form coming into the fight, and that mentally, physically, everything was 100% perfect. After he got taken down for the first 3 times, I mean, like, I believe that he got taken down either 2 or 3 times in that first round. So I mean, after that, it was like the pressure continued to mount, and I mean, any fighter would get mentally broken after a certain amount of time, and to have that multiplied over the course of 5 rounds, I could understand it getting to him. So I think that it's really a credit to Merab's style. But all that being said, yeah, Sean was trying to pick a couple of shots that either they landed or didn't from far distance, because he knew that Merab was going to come in and pressure the fuck out of him. Wasn't really trying to go for combinations. Wasn't really, I mean, no kicks even to really speak of. I mean, like, it was just not there for him, and it really did look like he just crumbled. And you could just kind of see it in his face. The body language was very telling as well. You heard his corner trying to hype him up throughout all of the in betweens, and it just wasn't getting through. I mean, like, honestly, I thought that Tim Welch was doing as much as he could to get his head back into this thing, but it just wasn't there. And then you've got Merab, who is just styling on him. I mean, I saw that tweet that was going around that was saying how, like, Merab did the basketball little thing that Sean does. He did the back kissing thing, which was fucking weird as shit, but he did it. I mean, the other time that Sean was on his back trying to work his way into some type of possible submission situation, he had the glove hooked. Herb Dean caught him on that, gave him a stern warning for that. That's something that also plays a part in your mental game. It's like, fuck, dude, I can't do anything when I'm standing. I can't do anything on the ground either. Apparently, it starts to wear on you. I just think over the course of the fight, it was just one thing after the next for him. Nothing was working, and everything was working for Merab.
Yeah, and I think the worst part of it, and this, I've been thinking this a while. I know we talk about coaches and they have their runs or whatever. I think Tim Welch is one of the most fraudulent, like, great coaches right now. The fact that in going into the 5th round, he went to Sugar and he said, "It's all right, man. We're almost done with this. Just get it over with." Like, it's ridiculous that's the mindset that you have as your coach. It's like you're just pouting with him. Like, you're just both being crybabies now. So
Yeah,
it's whatever. I mean,
I'll
Rob
give you
deserved
that.
the uniform.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll give you that one. I think that at that point, it might have just been that it was so far gone. I mean, because earlier than that, because that's going into the 5th. I mean, in between the 3rd and the 4th, or I mean, between the 2nd and 3rd rather. He was trying to get his head back in the game. I mean, I think that he just recognized that it wasn't there either, which you're right. I mean, I'll give you that one, that he should have been, doing the same amount of hype that he was to, before, to try to get him back into it. But, there's only so much blood you can try to get out of that stone. I would agree with you too that Welch is probably somewhat of a fraud. I mean, I think that he reminds me for different reasons, but same basic idea. He reminds me a little bit of Edwin Tarverdian, who was Ronda Rousey's coach. I think that when you have a star fighter that is doing really great things on their own, so to speak. I mean, on their own is a little bit strong. When they are naturally gifted and doing great things against lower competition. I mean, not that all of his competition has been lower. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he is undefeated on a nice streak. I think that it's easy to give the coach a bit of a pass in that, you know, their fighter is doing more of the legwork than they are.
Yeah.
So, you know, Welch is actually, at one point, I was actually considering doing a video about Tim Welch because he's a fascinating guy in the sense that he was a fighter for a while himself, stopped fighting, started coaching, and pretty much only coaches Sean. I mean, like, I don't know if he's got...
became a groomer for Sean.
All right, that's a little loaded there. I don't want to start any kind of rumors off of that, but I mean, he picked up Sean early in his career, and I mean, I don't know if he's got other students or whatever, but like, you know, they're best friends. They do their podcast together. He's his coach. It's the dynamic is a little bit strange when you compare it to, you know, like a Factory X or like a, you know, like a Trevor Whitman. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's just an odd situation with him. And yeah, after a fight like that, I mean, you see the difference between a coach like him versus a coach like Eric Nixick, who was also coaching on the card that evening. I mean, Eric Nixick, I think, is one of the absolute best coaches in the game. And you can see the difference in the levels of coaching when the adversity is as much as it was in the fight like that. Like Nixick would have been a completely different set of instructions, a completely different type of hype. Yeah, I guess if there was ever a fraud checking for a coach, this might have been it.
Yeah, especially after that shit he was pulling in the first round.
Well, I mean, that just kind of speaks to the fact that I think he's also somewhat of a little bit of a slime ball. I mean, the whole reason that Merab was as keen to pick up on that and go after it so quickly was because he did the same shit against Aljo. Aljo claims that he didn't hear it, but that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. And if it did happen, that's just dirtball moves on your corner's part. I mean, like, you let your fighter do the you know, let their fighting say the story. You know what I mean? Like you shouldn't be in there trying to do that kind of shit. That's underhanded and it's unsportsmanlike, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I get you.
So yeah. So Merab is the champion now. I mean, Umar is waiting in the wings. What, you know?
I mean,
what do you think?
People are saying Umar's the better version of Merab. Merab has been saying that he wants to fight Figgy to pad his resume, but I mean, it really is what it is. I want to see Figgy versus Peter Yan. If that has to happen for the belt after Figgy beats Merab, well, that's fine.
Oh, you think Figueiredo's going to be able to do it?
I think Figgy is just. I think he's championship all around. He can figure it out. He's got the skill set to do everything. And like I said, flyweights, bantamweights, they can all surprise. It's
all right, fair enough. I got to ride with Merab, man. I think that his style is just too. I don't see a great counter argument for his style. Like, I mean, like, he's just so far on the outside until he wants to start working, and he picks his openings really well too. So it's like, you know, he'll stay out there at range until he doesn't want to anymore. That was another a note to make, that Herb Dean calling him to be more active, like he wasn't doing the exact same thing in the 5th round that he was doing the entire fight. I thought that was a little strange, but I guess it does speak to the you know, the style that he has. He'll stay on the outside as long as he needs to do it. I mean, I think that Umar is probably going to get the shot. You know, the organization wants him because of the name. And he did just get a amazing victory over Corey Sandhagen. Amazing in relative terms, of course, but amazing that it happened. So yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably what's going to happen. I will say that I think that Umar's striking is probably a little better than Marab's. So maybe there's a case to be made that Umar is somewhat elevated compared to Marab. It might be a good, opposing forces kind of matchup to see who can actually get their game plan off and execute it more solidly between the two of them. We'll have to see. I think that I saw in the chat somebody had mentioned that Sean says he's going to take some time off. Uh, if that's the case, good on him. What do you think's next for Sean?
If you're gonna take time off like this after one loss, brother, you got a lot of reality to wake up to if you're gonna be in this sport. Like, why are you crying about one loss? Like, I get you were the champ and you just lost your belt. Like, if you're so good, like you've been trying to tell people, why aren't you getting back in here next week? Why aren't you coming? You didn't take any damage. Like, why aren't you coming back in 2 weeks, getting your number one contender spot? Go title eliminate somebody right now. What is the problem, Sean? Why do you need to take time off so you can, try to pull some card in a year and be like, oh, well, I haven't fought since, my last fight was the title shot. So I deserve to be, in contention somewhere. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I guess that also is a note to make is that Sean skipped out on the post-fight press conference as well. So there's another shade of Ronda Rousey in it. Yeah, it is. I think it's the fact that Sean really believed his own bullshit, because it wasn't bullshit for a long time, and that's an unfortunate
For one
thing.
fight.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for the longest time, the Cheeto original Cheeto fight aside, which he had a way to justify in his mind, it wasn't bullshit. But I mean, I think he really was high on himself, and when people that have that self perception get knocked down a peg, it can kind of be shattering. So, but yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see what ends up happening when he does come back.
Yeah, and so here goes Anakin and Larry, talk about Sean and Cejudo or Sean and Corey. People want to see Sean and Corey, and I can maybe agree, but I want to see him and Henry after that fucking moment that they had, where Henry was like, I love to have the moment to bend the knee because I think you absolutely suck, that fucking thing.
Sure.
I want to see that fight after that.
Yes. I'm down with that fight. Also wanted to touch on the question that John Dong had posed earlier on, who reposted here. He asks, what do you think the UFC would have done if Sean had knocked Merab out after Herb stopped Merab from kissing Sean? Do you think they would have taken Sean's side given how the UFC tries to make him a star? Well, first of all, the UFC doesn't have a say in that because that is a commission decision. The UFC and the commission don't they do not intersect when it comes to what the referees or judges do. However, I would be curious to see what the officiating staff would have done had that been the case, because I mean, I think that it honestly would have just gone down as a knockout, and that really would have just been it. I don't think that there's really any leg room for any other case to be made there. It was a low fight IQ move for Merab in the first place, to be perfectly honest. Merab should not have disengaged the way that he did. He thought the round was over. It was not. That's on him. He shouldn't have been kissing the back of Sean O'Malley to begin with as well. Merab, I made this point before the fight, and I'll make it again. I like Merab, but I do think he's a bit of an idiot. And the way that he was kind of conducting himself in there, it was fun. It was fun to watch, but it was not always high level technicality. You know what I mean? As far as like some of the more showboaty things, and then the some of the stuff like that. So yeah, I think it would have gone down as a knockout, and I think the UFC would have been very happy about that because of what ended up happening here. I don't think that Dana's particularly happy that Merab has the belt, because now he has 3 champions that are all kind of boring. I mean, like, the boring champion era certainly has been ushered in here. And, I don't think that bodes well for this sport as far as it being a prize fight / entertainment property. So, that's kind of just how I see it.
Yeah, and gosh, if he would have knocked him out, which I want to actually make the point, the fact that he didn't gosh, you got one free shot on Marab. His back was turned, and you couldn't do nothing with it. And the fact that he showed some urgency, like, I got to get up and do this. Like, this has got to be my one shot here to fucking finish it. And it didn't work. Yeah, that was probably the end of his confidence right there.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, looking at it as like the one opening that you have, and really unfortunate in the grand scheme of things that it was the one opening that he had. I mean, again, I really just think that Marab's style is just very hard to manage. And the other thing that you can add to that is that he can do it forever. The man's nickname, The Machine, is so goddamn accurate. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a more accurate nickname in all of MMA. The dude can keep up the pace. Like they were, I mean, I thought it was all cap. The conversation going into the Sean Aljo fight that the Merab and Aljo had like fought an entire 5 rounds before the fight started. I mean, granted, that was Aljo going into that fight, but I sincerely believe that Merab could have fought another 5 rounds if he had it, if he had to. So
yeah,
I just think that Merab is a very difficult puzzle for any fighter to wrap their head around. Also, yet another point to make in all of this: Sean did not land the one shot that could have put him out, but had Sean been more accurate with his striking, had he put more strikes on, Merab still has not been knocked out. So, who's to say whether the one shot could have even done it? So if you're talking about a guy who's got this crazy style that is extremely hard to navigate, you have this guy who can do it for 5 rounds plus, and he has a chin that either has not been tested or cannot be tested. I think all of that equals up to a very dominant champion going forward.
Yeah.
So
it was a good one. UFC Noche, man.
Yeah, there you go. So that indeed was UFC 306, Noche UFC, O'Malley versus Dvalishvili. Overall, I thought pretty great. I mean, yeah, not pretty good. There were some great fights on it, and the presentation itself was enough to make this thing fantastic. So regardless of the quality level of all of the fights, it was a spectacle to behold and historic as well, for being the first sporting event inside the Sphere. So if there are more fights to happen in the Sphere, we just saw the first of them, which I thought was really cool. So, yeah, good times.
Easy does it.
Yes. All right. So let's move on to the wrong one. Let's move on to the Contender series. This is week 5. And what'd you think of these fights?
They weren't as good as previous weeks. This one kind of slugged around. I was waiting for it to be over. I skipped past a lot of commercials and replays of the fights because there wasn't much on the replays of many of the fights, really. The ones that even did have moments, like we'll talk about later, me and Dana agree, like it just didn't impress me to the point. We'll talk about it. There was some good moments.
Sure. All right. Well, let's get into it. We can start off here with Carini Laframboise, I believe is how you say her last name. Carini Laframboise versus Nicole Cagliari.
Yeah, my girlfriend.
Yeah, a lot of people's girlfriend after that fight. She's a little too muscular for me. That's the first note in my notes, is that she is fucking yoked. That chick is crazy physique. Her traps are ridiculous. I mean, like, her upper body is just insanely cut. And her physique signals the power that she has, because her strength is certainly there. Had some at least a nice toss or two in that fight. But in my opinion, the real story of this fight was the odd ending sequence that was more of a low fight IQ for Carini than it was an amazing armbar for Cagliari.
Yeah, I thought the armbar, good for her that she got to finish because I wasn't thinking that these women were going to finish, even though Gianni, whatever his name is, he had the money down for under 2.5, which was nice. But the striking that these women showed to start this fight was so bad. It was so bad. God damn. She's going to get probably cooked in the UFC. But I, I don't know. Maybe she'll be able to muscle her way past the first two people or one, or, maybe have a good fight. But yeah, Cagliari, I don't know, girl.
Yeah, maybe not the most technically proficient in that regard. So that fight ending sequence, as I said, was kind of odd. They both sort of tumble down. La Framboche, she gets up and or they well, okay, basically they like she basically like stays on her back there, if I'm not mistaken, and then Cagliari essentially just says, "I'll have your arm, please," and takes it. And then, I mean, it was the most telegraphed armbar that I've ever seen in my life. That's what I'm saying. It was just a really low fight IQ kind of situation. Um, I was just surprised by the whole thing. I mean, she grabbed the arm, got it, didn't get it in the first position that she was in, adjusted the position to what she wanted it to be, got it off of that. That was the thing that I thought was most impressive about that part of the performance was that adjustment reminded me a little bit of Kevin Holland's armbar against Mikhail Oleshchuk. If you don't get the first angle that you want it to be, try another one. Something's going to hurt.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, true.
So I thought that that was a nice adjustment and a great way for her to finally get it, but I just couldn't get over the fact that La Framboche just did not recognize that the armbar was what was going to happen because, as I said, it was telegraphed from a mile away.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah. And Haunter in the chat is saying that he'd let Cagliari put him in an armbar. I think that you are not alone in that assessment, my friend. Moving on to Josias Musasa versus Otari Tanzalovi. This was a competitive fight, but I wasn't super impressed by either of these guys.
Either of them? No. The dude from the Congo, Musasa, he was cool. For the first half of the fight, I did think his name was Mufasa. I don't know what my problem is. But the fact that he, one, is coming out of a country, he trains out of the Congos currently, is what they said.
Yes.
So the fact that he comes out of there, shows up here, and puts on a very good performance against somebody who trains with the best in the world right now, two of the best in the world. And he put on a very good performance. Like, I mean, he was taking him down. He was trying to wrestle with him. He was striking with him. And Musasa, with just raw skills and the will to win, like, he really did a lot of interesting stuff. There was positions that he shouldn't have got out of that he did just because he's a freak. Like, it was fun in my opinion. And I think Dana made the right call giving him a contract because he's going to do big things if you get him out of the Congo and get him like at the PI and stuff.
All right, fair enough. I mean, yeah, maybe I'm just looking at it a little differently because I'm seeing it in the chat. People are really high on Musasa. I mean, it was a split decision. I thought that it being a split decision was pretty much appropriate. I think that both of them need a little bit work on their technique, but it was competitive for sure. I think I went for Musasa on the watch along. Oh no, I think I had it for Tanzalovi on the watch along, but it went to Musasa. That's fine. It's cool that he got the contract. It's nice to see fighters from emerging markets getting into the organization and doing their thing. I don't know if he's going to be holding up on the main stage. Personally, I see it in the chat too. They're saying that he's gonna. I would tend to gut instinct is telling me that that's not going to be the case, but we'll see because as you had said, he got himself out of some pretty tight snags there. I also thought that Tanzalovi wasn't half bad himself in that regard. Like, I mean, I think both of them had their moments. That's why it was a split decision. I wasn't mad at that.
Yeah, I think Tanzalovi, he's going to find himself in the UFC just as a fill-in here soon. They didn't say it outright, but Dana said that he thought Otari should have won. Probably would have gave him a contract, but he was also interested in Musasa. And I think this dude's gonna be good, man. He's just got that it factor, I think. He doesn't speak English. You don't need to sometimes when your game backs it up.
Fair enough. Yeah. Shout out to the Lion King over here. We see what he can do in the
Literally.
actual. Yeah, see what we can do on the big stage. So interesting note here. Generally the Contender Series is 5 fights. We only had 4 this evening because the fight between Quimiel Otani versus Cody Steele, that fight was canceled because Quimiel Otani pulled out of the fight, and Dana said he was scared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they said it
Yeah,
actually took multiple attempts from him. Like Cody
yeah,
Steele at the end of the show said he had his hands wrapped. They walked in and said it was done, so they cut him off, and they came back in and said, "We're gonna go ahead and try it." And then he got ready again, and then they said, "Never mind." So
yep, kind of crazy. I know a lot of people were looking forward to seeing Cody Steele. Apparently, he had a little bit of hype coming into this fight off of his performances on the regionals. Steele gets his show and win money and will be rebooked. So there you go. I don't know what weight class they were fighting in. I'd have to look that up. But if if they were fighting at, I believe, middleweight, then maybe him versus Torres Finney might be the fight to make. I don't know. He looked a little bit small for a middleweight, so I don't think
yeah,
that
no,
was
I
the
don't think
case.
it's middleweight.
But yeah. But either way, he'll get rebooked, so we'll see him going at some point in the future here. But kind of crazy, and yeah, I guess the point that I want to make there is
Do it. I mean, there's gonna be plenty of other people that you're probably gonna be scared of, brother.
yeah, most definitely. So yeah, unfortunate for Steele, but he'll get his time to do it.
Ugh, this next fight.
Yeah. So the next fight is Taiga Iwasaki versus Yusari Belgarwi. Yeah. So Belgarwi trains with Alex Pereira. He is a very tall middleweight. He was looking pretty decent with his ranged striking and whatnot. But good lord, with the fucking eye pokes from this guy.
Yeah, eye pokes were really bad from him. At the beginning of the fight, I said to myself, he's probably training with Alex because he is tall for nothing and not very great, probably. And he just stands in front of him and gets beat up by Alex. I would assume that's how that goes. When I saw him on the fight, I'm looking at the striking numbers. He did actually have some good percentages here, but I don't buy it. This dude is not very good. Even with the finish, like you said, the eye pokes, very egregious. But even with the finish, thank God Dana did not sign this dude. I know we talk about these weight classes needing people in the league. I'm glad Dana's putting his foot down with some of these finishes, starting to pick up in the seasons. Like, we're running out of contract space. Not every finish is going to get it.
Yeah, most definitely. And I thought that was the appropriate way to handle it as well. He did end up getting the knockout in the third. I mean, it's unfortunate that he conducted himself the way that he did with the fingers, because I think that had he not poked all of those times, then it might have been more attractive to the boss. And that's just one of the things. I mean, like, you got to know all of the factors coming into this sport, and your control of your weapons is one of the most fundamental things that you have in the sport, because it's such an easy way for you to ruin a great performance. It's such an easy way for you to have the fight go the other direction. Had this thing gone to decision, it might very well have been a draw.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're kind of screwing yourself with the way that you're conducting yourself in there if you're not in better control of your skill set and your hands. I mean, for lack of a better word, I mean, just keep your fucking hands closed, for Christ's sake. This is not rocket science.
100%. I agree. We go
And
through it all the time.
yeah, for sure. And Hunter saying that he was a -1,000. I mean, yeah. You know, it certainly didn't live up to all of that. Again, with these heavy price tags, I'm telling you, man, this betflation is all kinds of crazy. You know, these guys coming in with these huge tags attached to them, and you know, not looking like they really necessarily deserve all that. I mean, he did get the finish in the end, so I guess you can say that all's well that ends well. But it's, you know, not contract worthy, and I'm glad that that was the outcome from that.
Yeah.
All right, and finishing up here, rounding the whole thing on out was Navajo Sterling versus Philip Latu. What'd you think?
I I know that this fight ended in a finish from a guy who is very, I want to say inexperienced because he's only 5-0, but that's not really the word to use because the team that he comes from is full of very experienced people. I do believe that when I wish that I could have told this dude he should go and get more competition and fight some more fights, but he literally has knocked out everybody in the competition that he's faced. So like he doesn't have anywhere other to go. He's already at the cusp of the competition in his region or whatever. So yeah, I mean, he'll be good in the light heavyweight. I did see some. I don't know. He is kind of slow and sluggish at sometimes, but I think he's going to be a dog either way. Light heavyweight, we need plenty of those.
Yeah, for sure. So Sterling gets the knockout, and I mean, you know, great for him. I did feel kind of bad though because I liked the way that uh, Latu was fighting up until
Mm-hmm.
that point. I thought he might have been winning that fight. I mean, he was countering really nicely. He was a little flat-footed, but it ended up kind of like being okay for him because he was just able to kind of bob and weave his way out of there. I thought that everything was working for him until it wasn't, kind of thing. And you know, sometimes that's just the way of it. You know, you can say that the flat-footed style kind of worked against him in the end. Obviously, he did get knocked out, but I don't know. I just saw flecks of something in him that this ending didn't show. You know what I mean? It would have been nice if he was able to do a little bit more. He did look like he was gassing a little bit early. I think that maybe there might be a little bit of a gas tank issue for him. Of course, fighting light heavyweight, that's always a consideration. But yeah, I mean, the knockout was certainly there for Sterling, and he's already booked. He's going to be
Yeah, I saw
on.
that.
Yeah, he's going to be on the Tampa card, so I will be able to see him live and in person. How about that?
Oh,
Uh,
word, you're going?
oh yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
I'll be there in Tampa. So
Good deal.
yeah, yeah. So that'll be kind of cool. And one thing I did want to just briefly mention, just because I thought it was kind of strange, I guess, is that did you notice that Sterling does this like nose touchy thing very often? I don't know what that's about. I think that might just be something that he does subconsciously when he's like in the zone. Because I would say that it looks like a nervous tick, but he didn't seem that nervous. I think it was just something that he kind of subconsciously does when he's, you
Keep
know,
his
in the
hand to
zone.
his face. Some people
Yeah,
scratch, like they'll do like a little, sometimes they do that, but his is like a little, I don't know.
yeah. It reminds me of the Dustin Poirier shorts pull. You know,
Or his
just
hair flip,
yeah, something
something to
like that.
reset.
Yeah, but it was just one that it was very noticeable. So I'm starting hashtag nose touch gang for Mr. Navajo Joe over here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a tick he's talked about. Okay, fair enough. I mean, as I said, it didn't look like a nervous tick though, because he did not seem nervous. I mean, or he might just be a very intense guy because when he got the contract, he he when he got the contract, he didn't show like an ounce of emotion. He just sort of was like, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. You know, like it was just so he might just be one of those like really intense dudes to begin with. But whatever the case may be, really nice knockout for him. So we'll see what he can do on the big stage, and I will report back with my findings.
One last thing I'll say is when
Yeah.
you brought up that I'm gonna actually know a lot of things about flags. The New Zealand flag has red stars instead of white. This is the Australian flag. They have white stars. New Zealand is red.
All right. Well, how about that?
Yep.
There you go. Your flag expert over here, Chase Parton. If you ever need to know a country's flag, you got a prime source of knowledge right there in Chase. So good stuff. So that was week 5 of the Contender Series. We've got a little bit of a layoff coming up here. As far as fights go, we've got Contender Series for the next 2 weeks, but no actual events for the next 2 weeks as far as regular UFC operation goes. So a little bit of downtime, which is unfortunate. You know, we're very spoiled in this sport to to have events almost every weekend. So we got a little bit of time off, but regardless, we will be back next week to talk about the upcoming fights and just do our normal Monday check-ins as we do. Anything else you want to go over before we call it a day here, Chase?
No, I think that's about as good as it gets on here.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, lot packed into this one, but so we will. I guess we will not be here for watch-alongs. We'll see what we end up doing as far as streaming goes during the downtime, but maybe figure something out for some of that. Either way, when there are fights happening, you can watch the watch-alongs with myself and the Vitz King right here on the Yama channel. And Chase, I know that you can tell them where they can find you for your watch-alongs.
Everybody, you can find me doing watch-alongs, creating regular content on my channel at youtube.com/@CPSmalls, and we be going crazy on there.
There you go. Absolutely. Also follow my dude on Twitter as well.
I didn't want to plug it this time. It was too much talking. But, here we go. Creative Parton, Partin. We are on there going stupid as well. Meet you.
Hey, never too much talking. Follow my dude. So new video out on the channel right now. It is about John Jones, doing pretty well. Let me know what you think. Like it if you like it. Dislike it if you don't. As I said, there's always something going on this channel too. We will be live on Tuesday for the Contender Series watch along here. The following Tuesday, unfortunately, we will not be live for, but we will do a makeup stream for that one as well. So stick with us. Hoping to have another video out soon. I'm trying to get another Yama episode out to cover Noche UFC. We'll see how I end up doing that one. It might have to just be a straight video outside of the Yama series because of how crazy the presentation of Noche UFC was, but I haven't decided yet. So either way, always something new coming out. We appreciate all of y'all in the chat. Really active chat today. Thanks for everybody who stuck around and was rocking with us. You guys are the best. Sticking with us also through a couple of stream issues, which I noticed. We'll try to get that worked out too, man. I've been working on it, but it's an evolving process, as you know. So until next time, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your week. Fight on, y'all.
Insane.